welcome into another edition of the Giant Overreaction, the best division in football, all of that good stuff, man. Big shout out to the gang. Appreciate y'all pulling up. We got the Hard Knocks, the offseason with the New York Giants, episode 5, the final episode of this series coming on tonight. It's kind of bittersweet. I definitely have enjoyed this a good bit, especially with my cinematography background, man. Just seeing the way that they can get behind the scenes, you know, in the front office on the New York Giants has been a great thing. But we got football on Thursday, y'all. I don't know if y'all know this yet, but the Hall of Fame game is on August 1st. This Thursday, we're going to see Caleb Williams take on C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. I mean, what a fantastic way to get the season started. Let's get caught up on training camp before we get off into talking about what to expect from tonight's episode. For those of y'all that need a plug to get into the right direction to see tonight's episode, I did pin a link to this stream, so definitely check that out. We'll be repeating that throughout this stream. But training camp has definitely been interesting, an interesting start. This isn't feeling the same vibes as we did last season, where everything was kind of clicking. We went into the season thinking that the New York Giants offense was going to be back and be able to produce points. We've looked kind of terrible in training camp, especially today. Malik Neighbors was on a pitch count, and his reps were definitely scaled back today a little bit. It's non-injury related, but without him, you know, out there in that wide receiver core, we kind of came back down to earth, man. So definitely got to make sure we find a way to get these other wide receivers and the rest of this offense clicking. I mean, it's been exciting seeing Malik Neighbors get out here and, you know, in his first year having a successful training camp and whatnot, but the rest of this offense definitely has to get things going here. Jermaine Illuminor did practice. He's battling through some bruised ribs here. The bad news here is Lawrence Cager. They say that his hamstring injury is probably pretty serious. And he was having a pretty good camp, had a couple of touchdowns there, some deep balls. He looked like he could be a guy that was going to be a factor on this offense. And they're saying his hamstring injury might keep him out for a lengthy amount of time. Brian Burns injured his ankle in practice. They're saying that's nothing to worry about. He had some remarks on that saying it's not a big deal. We also released cornerback Aaron Robinson today. And the whole Aaron Robinson project has been interesting. After he got injured, I think that was in 2021 or 2022, he has not seen the field since. And when you go back and you look at that 2021 draft class, that leaves just one player from that draft on the New York Giants current roster, which was just 3 seasons ago. So that's extremely unfortunate. And that player is Azeez Ojulari. You got Kadarius Toney, Ellerson Smith, who we really never saw on the field, Gary Brightwell, Rodarius Williams, and now Aaron Robinson, all former New York Giants. I don't know if the saying once a Giant, always a Giant is going to apply to these guys, because they really did not see the field as contributors for us during their tenure here. And that draft that's looking like one of the worst drafts probably across the entire NFL in the past decade. So best of luck to Aaron Robinson, but for the New York Giants, and people still clinging on by a thread onto Dave Gettleman did some good things here. Go back and look at that 2021 draft. In other camp news, you had Jalen Hyatt running much better routes from what I'm seeing out there. Also, Turbo Miller, Dante Miller at the running back position, a rookie. He's looked really good in this camp so far, too. It's going to be very tough to not only find a way for him to get on the roster, but I think it'll be even more difficult to cut him or keep him on the practice squad, because that guy has been making exciting plays, explosive plays throughout the entire duration of this training camp thus far. Andrew Thomas, just looking like a dog out there in camp. All you can do is pray that he stays healthy throughout the entire season, because we're going to need him. We made some moves on the offensive line. We're going to talk about that today. But Andrew Thomas, living up to the name, is one of the best left tackles in the game. Nick McLeod has looked really good in camp, too. He's got 2 interceptions on back-to-back days. Got one today. I'm thinking that Nick McLeod is likely going to take that cornerback 2 spot from Cordell Flott. We'll see how that goes, but definitely looking good in camp. And we can't fall for this again. We did see it with Trey Hawkins III in last year's camp. A lot of hype, making some big splash plays in camp, and then when it came time to get out there on the field, he allowed a perfect passer rating throughout his time on the field in 2023. So I'm trying to pump the brakes here a little bit, but I am excited to hear some good news coming out of training camp. Theo Johnson back on the field at practice. And they released a trailer for tonight's episode of Hard Knocks, and they talked about Theo Johnson in particular. So, you know, I was worried if they were going to get into the depths of the draft, into the later rounds, and assessing some of the things that the Giants front office was doing. And the trailer definitely gave us a little bit of a hint into that. And somebody that Shane was on the phone with told him pretty much Theo Johnson equals a straight dog. Had him at the Senior Bowl, respectful, but he ain't afraid to scrap. And those are the kind of players we need on this roster. 6'6", 260 pounds, and he ran a 4 4.57 at the combine. So a lot of news coming out of camp, some good, some bad. We're going to get to talking about the quarterback position. I know a lot of people on here about how that's been going in camp. Let me tap into the chat one time here. And for those of y'all that are going to be watching this on repeat and you need the plug for tonight's stream, definitely tap into the comment section there. We got one pinned in the live chat there, so you can make your way to watching tonight's episode. But a big shout out to everybody who pulled up, man. Y'all know what it is, man. The gang is in the building. Giants Nation is in the building. I see the fam Michael Knight is in the building one time. What's going on, fam? Deedon Shelton is in the building. He said it's been a minute, but let's do this. Yes, sir. Joe Marr is in the building. We got Fryer been in the building religiously over these past couple of streams, man. Big salute to you, fam. Gregory in the building representing them Dallas Cowboys one time. We got Kareem Yee in the building. My guy, Max Webster, man. I hope all is well. I haven't seen you in a while, man, or heard from you. He said, kind of bittersweet, ready for the episode, not ready for the series to end. I know that's right. Max, hit me up on Twitter. I do got a plug to all the reruns of the episodes in case you want to do what I'm going to do, which is just binge those until the season starts. I'm going to just keep watching them and watching them and watching them, seeing if I can find some more details. But shout out to Max, man. It's been a while, man. I hope all is well with you, fam. Door Gunner is in the building. What's going on? Another loyal in the building. Let me see. Jomar says that Fax Miller is a stud. Yeah, he's definitely looked good in camp so far. Jameson is in the building. What's going on, Jameson? Hope all is well with you, fam. Big Dash in the building. Big Dash knows what? Big Dash knows New York Giants football. Make sure y'all go subscribe to the fam over there one time, man. Holding it down for the Giants Nation. Let me see. Door Gunner says, what's the over-under for neighbors blowing up on DJ? I'm taking the over. Look, man. From what I'm seeing coming out of training camp, you know, I'm just losing the little bit of faith that I had in Daniel Jones going into this season to at least play, you know, up to par at the quarterback position. But I see a guy who is still stuck in that realm where he was at during the Las Vegas Raiders game when he tore his knee, a guy who's been a little bit inaccurate. You just hope to see some of these things get cleaned up before we get out there and take on the Minnesota Vikings in week 1. But, yeah, I'm taking over on that all day. Bookend is in the building one time. He says, what's good? Can't listen live. I will watch later. Go G Nation. I appreciate you pulling up, just dropping by and saying what's up, man, and hope you enjoy the rerun of this one. This one's going to be a pretty short episode. I'm going to try to get y'all out of here in 40, 45 minutes. We'll see how that goes. And shout out to Greg one time in the building. He says, he DM'd me today, too. He says, what's up from your favorite DMer? Greg just be kind of just like throwing thoughts out there at me in my DM. You know, he'll preface it with like, yo, you don't even got to answer this. I just need to get the thoughts out, man. But shout out to Greg, man. Always out here supporting the New York Giants and definitely good talking ball with the homie Greg. Shout out to all of y'all, man. Door Gunner says you should collab with Louis T for the Commanders. Yeah, that would be dope. I've reached out to Louis T back when we like first started the channel. I'll try to reach out to him again. I love what they're doing over there on his channel and what they're doing with the NFC East friends that they do with Bad Dog and Brunson and who's the other one? I forget the Cowboys content creator, but he's awesome as well too. So big shout out to them. I'll definitely make sure to reach out to Louis T. Love what he's doing. He's local in my area, so it shouldn't be too difficult for us to link up and have some conversations about some ball. But I will say this about Louis T. Louis T be kind of delusional. I'll be seeing some of his takes sometimes, man. Like especially entering the season when there's not much data out there. So it would be good to chop it up with him and bring him back down to earth and give him some authentic New York Giants takes. But let's get right off into this, man. This should be a really interesting episode tonight. I'm definitely looking forward to it. You know, and like the homie said, it is a bit bittersweet, like Max said, you know, because like it's over. This is the last episode. All we can hope is that they deliver on, you know, giving us some fire content on this last one. I was a little bit kind of like not disappointed, but I thought the last episode was just a lot of filler. But let's get right off into it, man. I got about 3 or 4 topics to talk about tonight. And let's get right to it and talk about, you know, what can we expect tonight on this episode of Hard Knocks. And let me get this comment off the screen one time. And this is what I would think, you know, being from what we saw on the trailer, tonight's episode should be focused on the draft and the process. It almost seems like this whole entire show was 4 episodes of just lead up to get to this big day and this point, you know, in April, which was the 2024 NFL draft. So I'm hoping to see, you know, a better episode than episode 4 for sure. I do expect to see a little bit more of, you know, for lack of a better word, like coddling of Daniel Jones, you know, from Joe Schoen especially, because, you know, episode 4 did reveal that they absolutely went out there and tried to at least attempt to trade up for a quarterback in this draft. Drake May being one of the guys, Jaden Daniels being another. And there was a cutoff point for where they wanted to draft a quarterback or what quarterback they wanted to draft, because J.J. McCarthy, even though he had said on the Rich Eisen show that, if he had to guess what team was going to draft him, he thought it was going to be the New York Giants. But it looked like the New York Giants absolutely didn't want anything to do with J.J. McCarthy, at least at the pick 6. And Joe Schoen, I'm like I said, I'm latching on to different things from episodes. I'm going back and I'm watching these episodes and trying to find little nuances and details. And in episode 4, Joe Schoen said, "It doesn't mean we don't have confidence in you, Daniel. You've missed 17 games since 2021. That is the reality of the situation. We're going to go through the quarterback process. It doesn't mean we're going to take one. I don't want you to be surprised if you see Drake May or J.J. McCarthy in the cafeteria." So it's like, they are worried about how Daniel Jones feels about this. And I think they should be, right? That is their starting quarterback. They're saying we're going into the year putting everything on Daniel's shoulders. And Joe Schoen did continue to say that, we did invest in Daniel, and hopefully he is healthy. The O-line is a little bit better. And, me as a guy who's a writer, producer, I like to latch on to words, right? He said the O-line is a little bit better after episode 4. Now, that is before they went out here and they made these moves like they did today. We're going to talk about that, too, with the Greg Van Roten signing as well. But I think that Joe Schoen is very conscious of where this New York Giants team stands. I think he's extremely conscious that, the O-line, he has invested, some dollars in bringing in some valuable assets, some guys that are veterans. But he understands that these guys aren't top of the notch offensive line players. And they did miss out on a couple of guys in free agency that they were trying to target. And this is the best that they could do. And I like what they did. Bringing in Jermaine Illuminor was amazing. And now you're starting to see them experiment with him at right tackle, which is exactly where I wanted him to be at. So it gives me a little bit more faith going into the season. For me, I want to see the process of the other top 10 teams. That's one thing I'd like to see. Like, how did they kind of move about it, and how do the New York Giants react when guys like Michael Penix go off the board at pick number 8? Even though they gave us a little inkling about how they reacted with a few statements on it, I just kind of want to see a little bit more details into that. Like when Jaden Daniels comes off the board and when Drake May comes off the board, what's the reaction in the draft room for the New York Giants? There was a lot of talk also on the last episode when they went to the trailer previewing the next episode about drafting Kool-Aid McKinstry. So it goes to show you that the Giants did have cornerback at the top of their board, and maybe Tyler Nubin was not their preferred draft pick in round 2, because we know Kool-Aid was not going to be there in round 3. So if they had their eyes set on Kool-Aid McKinstry, maybe the consolation prize was, going out there and drafting Tyler Nubin, who was the best safety on the board. So not a bad draft pick, but I do feel strongly about this draft. I think we're going to look back at this draft in hindsight in a couple of years and think that this draft probably wasn't all that great outside of Malik Neighbors. We'll see how it goes, though. I do got faith in some of these guys like Theo Johnson and Tyler Nubin, and what we're seeing out of Andrew Phillips out of camp so far is been pretty decent. So no complaints there. I do also want to see a little bit more about, they did talk about trading back, trying to get Rome Odunze, and if Rome Odunze wasn't there, possibly drafting Brock Bowers. So I kind of want to see a little bit more into that thought process. And, as far as today, the things that we do know entering this episode, the Giants definitely at least explored trading up for a quarterback. Malik Neighbors was absolutely Joe Schoen's guy. We know that. And John Mara, from what it seems like, is allowing Joe Schoen to have the kind of freedom necessary to go out here and build his team. And I think that John Mara is willing to die on that. You've seen him peek his head into the office in a couple of episodes and whatnot. But doesn't seem like he's too in the mix. And we've seen multiple occasions where Joe Schoen has his idea of where he thinks the New York Giants should go, whether it be with a draft pick or whether it be with re-signing a player. And John Mara feeling, a little bit indifferent about that, but Joe Schoen ultimately going, with what he thought was the best decision. And John Mara allowing him to do that, whether it was going to be to trade up and go draft a quarterback or whether it would be to go in and bring in some more weapons for Daniel Jones for another year and bank on Daniel Jones, taking us to the promised land in the next couple of years here, because that is where Joe Schoen is at currently. I won't even call it the rebuild. The building of this roster screams that they are trying to win now. And another thing that we found out in the last episode was that Brian Daboll absolutely wants and deserves to have his own quarterback on this roster. I think that is very important, that before, this whole thing goes to shits, that Brian Daboll can at least get his quarterback, because right now, and I'm not out on neither one of these guys, from Brian Daboll or Joe Schoen, but I will say that I'm like, Brian Daboll's a little bit on my better side right now. Just seeing the way that he has handled the shortcomings of this roster and gone out there in 2 seasons now and overachieved. I know people look at last year and they go, it was a terrible year. Quarterback got hurt. Left tackle got hurt. We looked like we were right there in the running for possibly the #1 pick, and then all of a sudden you string together a couple of wins with Tommy DeVito and Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, and the New York Giants are picking 6. But nonetheless, when you look at it from a coaching standpoint, Brian Daboll overachieved. Again, you go back to 2022, nobody expected the New York Giants to be a team that was going to be in the playoffs, let alone win a playoff game. So definitely, a lot of good things to say about Brian Daboll and what he has brought, to this offense. And going into 2024, he's going to be calling plays, and I would expect there to be at least some change. I don't know how much of a drastic change it will be, because we know that Mike Kafka was calling the same philosophy and, the same offense that Brian Daboll is going to be calling, but a different play caller can help things out. The last time I remember this being like a detriment to the New York Giants was when I can't remember the coach's name, but he was the former OC from the Cleveland Browns, and during that whole Joe Judge debacle, he ended up coming in and calling some plays when we fired Jason Garrett. So, and that didn't go well. It did not prove that bringing in a different play caller within the same system yielded better results. But I do expect some better results from Brian Daboll calling the plays this season. Now, again, for those of y'all that need a plug to check out tonight's episode, the comment in the live chat here is pinned to the top. Go ahead and check that out. It's going to take you to where you need to go. You can thank me later. And if you need the reruns and whatnot of the episodes, just reach out to me on Twitter. But let's get off into this first topic here. We're definitely going to be talking about the offensive line. Very important for the New York Giants to add depth. And that's exactly what they did today by adding another piece to this offensive line. So the Giants go out there and they sign another one of Carmen Bricillo's guys in Greg Van Roten. And this was reported early on today from Pat Leonard. Big shout out to Pat Leonard. And he also got a plug on what the contract is going to look like. I just saw that before I went live on air. Greg Van Roten's contract is a 1-year deal that will be worth $3 million now that's if he plays 50% of the Giants snaps in 2024. And I would expect him to absolutely get to that number. Greg Van Roten is 6'3", 305 pounds. He's 34 years old. He's not a young pup. He's definitely getting up there in age. And he was a part of the Jets from 2020 to 2021. Before that, he was drafted by the Packers. And all the way back in 2012, this is another guy, man, coming from that RG3 draft. These guys are definitely a little bit older. And during his tenure with the Jets offensive line was ranked 29th in 2020, but then they were ranked 11th in 2021. And I believe that was when they lost Mekhi Becton that year, too. So that says a lot about that line. Some of the PFF reports said that they were starting to gel and starting to get that offensive line to get in the right direction. But it seems like the Jets are still struggling right now with that offensive line. They addressed that in his past draft. He only had 4 starts and 355 snaps in 2022 for Buffalo. So he is a Buffalo guy, but not during the Joe Schoen era. That was in 2022 when Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll were already with the New York Giants. And he had his best year with the Raiders in 2023. I mean, by far. So he spent 2 years with the Packers, 3 years with the Panthers, 2 years with the Jets, and 1 year with the Buffalo Bills, and another 1 year with the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm interested as to why the Raiders didn't bring him back. They did have a top 10 unit across the board in pass blocking and in run blocking win rate as well. So it's kind of puzzling that they didn't bring this guy back. But nonetheless, with the New York Giants dealing with what they are dealing with up front already early on in camp with some injuries already out there, to me, this is a fantastic signing. You got JMS dealing with a shoulder injury already, and they say it's kind of similar to what he was dealing with last year, but it's not the exact same injury. Evan Neal has been nursing that ankle since last winter. And I think that they're starting to lose a little bit of faith in him being healthy at the beginning of the season, and that's why they probably went out here and made this move to bring in Greg Van Roten. And, Joe Schoen especially cannot afford to not address the depth on the offensive line again. We saw it last year where he tried to bank on a bunch of youthful guys, that he had drafted to mature and develop and be able to protect Daniel Jones going into the 2023 season. And we saw it. 2 injuries later, Daniel Jones is out for the year with the ACL tear. And even the other quarterbacks dealt with it all year. Tyrod Taylor was banged up a few times. Even Tommy DeVito had to leave a couple of games with a couple little, just scrapes and bruises and whatnot. And this offensive line has been poor. So we're looking to find a way to, improve that. Brian Daboll, in reference to bringing in Greg Van Roten, he said this. He said, I can see him playing any of the 3 spots we need on the inside, left guard, right guard, or center. And I do think they have botched the center position just a little bit. I'm I'm not like throwing a shot at JMS, but if JMS goes down, you would have been dealing with the same situation they dealt with last year when he had an injury where you had to bring in Ben Bredesen at center, and he's not accustomed to taking snaps there. That's not his favorable position, and it showed when he was on the field. We did allow Feliciano to sign with the San Francisco 49ers in the offseason before last, and I thought that was a major mistake. And, I was talking with one of my homies on Twitter, and we were talking about, maybe 2 days ago, we were talking about this, bringing in a depth piece to play center as well. And I thought Nick Gates would have been a guy that you could bring in. And you saw Nick Gates, he got signed today to now his third NFC East team. He's over there with the Philadelphia Eagles. And shout out to my homie Momo one time. Momo was like, man, I don't want any player that the Washington Commanders don't want on their offensive line. And I think now maybe his opinion might change just a little bit with the Philadelphia Eagles going out there and bringing in Nick Gates. But a big shout out to Nick Gates, man. I got to sit next to Nick Gates' family at the Washington Commanders New York Giants game here in the D.C. area at FedEx Field, and his family just showed me nothing but hospitality. Big shout out to LPG who got me those tickets for that game. And I saw Nick Gates at last year's Washington Commanders training camp as well, and he was just down to earth. I told him I was a Giants fan and whatnot, man, and I was wishing him well. It didn't work out in Washington, but I did think that he could have been a guy that the Giants could have brought in relatively cheap to be a backup center and be another depth piece on this offensive line with a versatile skill set. You could have moved him to guard in case somebody ended up getting hurt as well. But nonetheless, Greg Van Roten is a good signing. And now Jordan Renan said this today. Jordan Renan of ESPN, he's a beat reporter for the New York Giants. He said the biggest takeaway from the signing of Greg Van Roten, Giants are going to keep Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. They can't keep moving him back and forth. That means Evan Neal's run as starting right tackle is likely over, barring injuries to others. He also doesn't seem that close to a return himself. So that's right there from the grounds out there in New Jersey, at the training facilities and whatnot. And Renan said that he wouldn't be surprised to see this as his Giants starting offensive line for week 1, which would be Andrew Thomas at left tackle, John Runyon Jr. at left guard, back at left guard, I might add. That's where we thought he was going to play when we first signed him to the 3-year, $30 million contract. JMS at the center position, bringing in Greg Van Roten at the right guard, and then having Jermaine Illuminor be the starting right tackle. And honestly, y'all, this makes me just much more confident in this offensive line going into 2024. And if I'm more confident in the offensive line, that means that I can be a little bit more confident in Daniel Jones to go out there and put up a salvageable, average type of season and just don't lose games for the New York Giants. But what I'm seeing in camp so far is definitely alarming from Daniel Jones, especially with the inaccuracies down the field, seeing that Brian Dable is trying to really open up this offense. But just some PFF grades on Van Roten for the last 4 seasons. His best year in 2023, where he had a grade of 75.3. 2022, his grade was 57.6. 2021, it was 68.1. He was playing over there with the Jets. And then in 2020, also playing with the Jets, he was at a 63 grade. So he's a solid lineman. Shout out to Bobby Skinner from Talking Giants. He posted a couple of clips from him going up against players that are on our roster right now. He even had one clip where it was Greg Van Roten and Jermaine Illuminor on a double team on Dexter Lawrence. And, man, they was pushing Dexter Lawrence out of the screen. And I know that's not typical Dexter Lawrence vibes, but nonetheless, it's good to have some guys in here that we can at least have faith in to be at least, serviceable offensive linemen moving into the year and not having to use that as any type of excuse as to why the New York Giants are unable to achieve the things that they're trying to get to this year. Now, as far as Evan Neal, I don't know what you're going to do with this guy if he can't get on the field this year. Do you cut him next year? I'm not too sure, but shout out to the homie Walt from Twitter at WBG84. He posted the dead cap hits for Evan Neal, where if you were to trade him in 2024, the dead cap hit would be $3.7 million. If he's released, it'll be $10 million. So I don't think there's any world where the New York Giants are going to release Evan Neal at the end of this season. If it happens in 2025, a trade would be same thing, 3.7. And if he's released, it would save you just a couple more million, and it would be a 7.8 million dead cap hit. So New York Giants got to think about that. I'm sure Joe Schoen has already ran over this. And the cap savings if Neal were traded in 2024 would be 2.9, and in 2025 it would be 4 million. So I don't think you're really going to get away with trying to trade Evan Neal, to be honest. And I think I don't think his time at right tackle is done, but he's going to have to show them that he deserves snaps this year. And already during his tenure, he's been banged up so much that he really hasn't even had a real true chance at putting good tape on the field. It's just been inconsistent after inconsistency throughout Evan Neal's career. And I'm all out on Evan Neal, at least for this season. I'm not saying that you can't find a way to maybe salvage what happened with him and drafting him in the top 10 and whatnot. And maybe he can remain a New York Giant as he tries to develop and become a better player in this league. But I'm all out on Evan Neal, straight up and down. Let me see what the chat is talking about before we get off into this next topic real quick. David Paradin says that practice today was not good. Dable lost his cool. Looks like we are in mid-season form. Yeah, I definitely feel you on that, man. Today's practice, all the beat reporters reporting on it were definitely talking about how bad the offense looked. On the other side of it, I mean, the defense did look pretty decent. Michael Knight says, did you hear what Kyle Pizzle said about Daniel Jones on his last video? I didn't, but I'm sure it was pro Daniel Jones being, you know, a guy. I'm sure Kyle Pizzle's a big supporter of Daniel Jones, and you need people like that in the community, to be honest. Because I think, like, on Twitter, you get, like, the fan base is kind of split, but when it comes to, like, people covering the Giants and content creators and stuff like that, I'd say most people are out on Daniel Jones. There aren't a lot of people talking a lot of positives about Daniel Jones going into 2024 in the Giants community. So, I mean, I guess you need that, you know, and as long as you can support it with facts, I think it makes for good content at the end of the day. But shout out to Kyle Pizzle nonetheless. Shout out to the Beard one time. He said he checking in from the road, biceps in the building one time. The Beard, what is it, a 10-day road trip I think you on right now, man? You out there grinding, man. Big salute to the Beard one time. Appreciate you pulling up in your downtime and rocking out with us today, man. All right, so let's get off into this next topic. This one's going to be a real short one, but I did want to get off into talking about the wide receiver room and also, like, what can we expect as far as, you know, the guys that are going to make this roster come time when we got to cut some of these players and get down to the final roster and whatnot. So let's talk about this wide receiver room one time. Now, if you've been paying attention to what's been going on at training camp, seeing all the clips and whatnot that are spiraling around on social media, and it's great to have that kind of access. You know, back in the day, you wouldn't see any of these clips, and now it's like anybody that's there with a cell phone, we're getting some clips, but wide receiver room is looking pretty good. And just like I said about the offensive line, where we want to go into the year without having many excuses or, you know, any type of scapegoats as to why this season went left, I think the wide receiver room is pretty solid when you bring in a guy like Malik Nabers. And I know I was just talking about how when you remove him from this wide receiver room, it is a stark difference. But I think a lot of that has to do with the quarterback position, to be honest. You know, and even at the backup position, like with Drew Lock, there's nothing extremely exciting there, you know, about a guy who's going to be able to deliver on time and, you know, make this wide receiver core better than they actually are, which you got some burners out here. And I listed the wide receivers here. There's 12 of them, which is a ton of them. And I only expect the New York Giants to probably go with about 6, maybe 7 of these guys. And I look at 4 of them as an absolute lock on this roster. Malik Nabers, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Jalen Hyatt, the top 4 there. Those guys are absolute locks. We already know that. I've talked about Darius Slayton possibly being the odd man out come 2025, but I do think he's going to play a pivotal role on this offense. And honestly, I know we got Malik Nabers here and this guy's, you know, lighting up training camp. It would still not surprise me if Darius Slayton is at the top of the wide receiver room by the end of the year. I expect Malik Nabers to be there, but Darius Slayton has been doing this year in and year out, and he's not a young puppy. He's not a rookie either. He understands what it takes to get to those, you know, those thresholds of where he needs to be as far as wide receiver. Now, when you look at the other 8 names on this list, gets a little dicey here. I mean, you got 2 guys that have special teams experience in Isaiah McKenzie and Gunnar Olszewski. But outside of that, I mean, I even think a guy like Isaiah Hodgins does not have a guaranteed roster spot here. After a lackluster 2023, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he was on the roster, but it also wouldn't surprise me if the Giants parted ways with him. Allen Robinson has looked pretty good when running with the 2s and with the 3s in practice at training camp and whatnot. I saw him cooking one of these defensive backs with a nice little fake out route where he went back to the inside, caught the ball in the back end zone line and made a great catch. And he did some decent things with the Steelers last year in limited opportunities. I think he could be a contributor. When you look at Isaiah Hodgins and you look at Allen Robinson, I almost think like they're kind of like the same type of wide receiver, especially with Allen Robinson at this point in his career, not being a guy known for speed or, you know, elite route running or elite releases, but still has the hands and still is a savvy veteran in this league. I think him and Isaiah Hodgins are pretty much on the same level. Now, as far as training camp goes, second year out of Western Illinois. This dude was on the Dallas Cowboys roster last season. Dennis Houston has been surprising. And looking at the Talking Giants recap of the practice today at training camp, they talked about he's going to be a guy during the preseason that you definitely got to keep your eyes on, and he should be exciting to watch during preseason. And I definitely think that is the case. You got Ayer Asante, who's probably not going to make the roster, maybe a practice squad guy, and then Bryce Ford-Wheaton, who a year ago was looking like he was absolutely going to make this roster. Bryce Ford-Wheaton reminded me of that wide receiver from the Jets. I forget his first name, but his last name is Brownlee. They played a game very similar. Lean type of guys who like to go up and catch the ball, high-pointed and whatnot. Bryce Ford-Wheaton, though, he might be an odd man out here and be on the practice squad and won't be able to get his opportunity until, one of these guys possibly go down with an injury. But it's going to be a tough, that spot 5, 6, and maybe 7, I think is going to be extremely tough. Let me know what y'all think in the chat. If y'all think, who you think is going to make the roster as far as the wide receivers go outside of the big 4 that we have. I mean, Isaiah McKenzie could possibly make it, but I think he might be a little bit too far off into his career. And Gunner showed last year that he was an effective piece returning punts. And I think, they didn't use him too much at wide receiver, but you do need a guy. We've seen what happens when the New York Giants don't address punt return. Things can get extremely ugly. So I do think that one of those guys probably makes the roster. Me personally, I would like to see Allen Robinson make this roster and get another shot at kind of reviving his career a little bit, man. Y'all know me, man, as an OG. I just turned 41. I'm always rooting for the OGs, man. So I would love to see Allen Robinson, a guy who in 2019, that wasn't 2019, that was 2021, when we signed Kenny Galladay, he was the other top wide receiver on the free agent market during that time. So, it's going to be kind of crazy if he makes this roster that 2 of those guys, Kenny Galladay and Al Robinson, were guys that we wanted, and we end up getting both of them, on the roster at one point or another. I see the Beard says that he says he's in Kentucky right now. I know what Kentucky's all about. We was out there for Mark's bachelor party one time, and it was definitely wild out there. Let me see. The Tank said, outside of the big 4 wide receivers, I'm thinking number 5 for sure. Okay. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, like Isaiah Hodgins should make the roster. He came in as a guy off the Buffalo Bills practice squad, and he did some damage that first season, had a lights out playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings. So I don't see why it would be an issue if he made the roster or not. I kind of agree with you on that. The homie 1T is in the building. What's going on, fam? He said punt return and kick return will absolutely determine which wide receivers make the 53 for sure. Yeah, I'm with you on that. They have to address a guy that's going to be able to go out there and return punts and possibly take on that kick returner role too that they had Eric Gray at last year. And I think Eric Gray might be a guy who could possibly be on the outside looking in as far as making this roster. Sigma Surge says, I think Isaiah McKenzie makes the roster for punt returns. Yeah, one of the 2. Oh, yeah, Big Dash knows. Yeah, Marcus Brownlee. And I remember the conversation we had, Dash, where you was like, this guy's probably going to be cut or something like that. And I was like, man, I don't know, man. Him and the punt returner kid that they had over there as well, the 2 homies they featured on the Hard Knocks, like both those dudes, man, definitely big-time playmakers. That's Marquise Brownlee, yeah, definitely a baller. I don't know if he makes the roster this year, though. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But let's get off into this next one. I did just want to kind of dibble and dabble about the wide receivers real quick before we talk about the quarterback position and whatnot, because there was a few major articles that came out today speaking on the practice and the lackluster performances that we've been seeing from the quarterback position. So let's go ahead and talk about this next one that came from Connor Hughes. Now, I didn't want to put like a whole lengthy paragraph quote on the screen, so I'm going to break this one down for y'all just a little bit here of what led to what he's saying here. This is from Connor Hughes of SNY. He says, rust is expected for the Giants quarterback. An excuse, sure, but a justified one. Maybe, just maybe, more time will transport Jones back to the player who led the Giants to that improbable playoff victory in Minnesota 2 years ago. Or maybe this is just the player Jones is now. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen must be ready for that reality and turn to Drew Lock if so. Let's play a little Giant overreaction here. If y'all think that this might be an overreaction, let me see some O's in the chat. If you agree that the Giants should take a look at Drew Lock, who has not looked that great in camp, looked about as good as Daniel Jones is what I would say. But if you think that they should at least have him prepared and ready to go to take some reps with the ones, let me see you put a U in the chat to represent you agree with the statement on the screen while I kind of go over some of this. Now, in camp, we've been seeing Daniel Jones miss throws, especially down the field. Today, we saw him miss like a 5-yard out route that a lot of people were clowning him. I saw all these multiple Twitter outlets, you know, these football type of accounts and whatnot, pretty much using Daniel Jones as a punching bag and being the laughing stock of a little short, like three-yard out route to Darius Slayton where the ball is not even near him. I mean, it's not even close, right? You had a spectacular catch from Jalen Hyatt in the last practice where it looked like it was an overthrow to me. It looked very similar to the throw in Washington to Darius Slayton when we ended up losing that game where Dexter Lawrence, quote unquote, jumped off sides, but a little bit farther out in front with a little bit too much heat and velocity on it for a guy that's running down the left sideline completely wide open. You've seen multiple overthrows to his guy, Darius Slayton, and Darius Slayton talked about this on the Keyshawn Johnson podcast that he don't know what it is, but him and Daniel Jones got this chemistry that a lot of the other guys in the wide receiver room in the previous years did not have. And that he credited that towards a lot of his success is being on the same page with Daniel Jones. And even those guys aren't on the same page. I definitely recommend all of y'all to check out this article in a little bit more details if you haven't seen it yet. It's on SNY, and the title of the article is Amid Daniel Jones' Early Struggles, Giants Can't Be Afraid to Give Reps to Drew Lock. In that article, I'm going to give you all a couple of quotables that I saw. It said, Dable's offense looks like it's working. Guys are open. It's not executing in large part because the ball isn't getting to those players. If Jones can't deliver it, then the Giants owe it to themselves and the rest of the players on this roster to see if Locke can. He also said it hasn't been entirely bad this summer for Jones. He's hit Hyatt and Neighbors for a couple of long gains. There's simply far more bad than good. Those inconsistencies are clearly starting to wear thin on Dable, whose temperament isn't a nurturing one. Y'all saw someone in the chat allude to it earlier, talking about Dable blowing up today in practice. I heard it had something to do with the offensive line as well, but I'm sure that going into now, you know, another year with Daniel Jones in the same system and seeing some of these same issues is definitely not sitting well with Brian Dable. Pat Leonard was also at the training camp today, and when he left the training camp, he said today's Giants offense was an absolute disaster. And Bobby Skinner said that Daniel Jones was 5 of 12 on the day. Now, it is training camp, right? And there are people out there that when it's bad, they say, oh, it's just training camp, why y'all overreacting? But then when it's good, they're like, oh, look at Jones' accuracy here and look at all that, right? I saw Big Dash actually tweet something out about this today, and I retweeted it. Like, just keep the same energy for both sides if you want to be, you know, honest with yourself. I can't tell you what to do. Fan how you want to fan. If you want to wear the goggles, do what you got to do, right? But at the end of the day, if it's training camp and it's just practice, you shouldn't be looking at the good plays in that realm either. Now, I've been now to 2 of the Washington Commanders training camps, and I'm watching the way that they're practicing in comparison to the New York Giants. And this is what I'll say. It's early on, right? But the temperature and tempo of the New York Giants training camp practices is on a way higher level than what's happening in Washington. I didn't even see Jaden Daniels throw the ball deep on either of those practices. Like, not once. Everything that they're doing is very chill, going through the motions like walkthroughs. Whereas the New York Giants right now have, you know, they're in full pads, hit the ground running. The tempo, I would say, is at about 80%. I saw some clips coming out from the Los Angeles Chargers training camp, man. They going full throttle over there, 100%. You're seeing Justin Herbert doing hard counts and all kind of stuff before they actually say hike on some of these plays, and they're going full speed. So I think the Giants are somewhere in the middle as far as the temperature of how things are going in training camp. Now, I do have issues with Drew Lock, right? I don't think that should stop you from giving him a chance at getting some first-team reps to just see what it would look like. And I do think we're going to get to see that in the preseason because I don't think we're going to see a lot of Daniel Jones in the preseason. But Drew Lock is absolutely a downgrade from Tyrod Taylor last year. Now, you look at Drew Lock's PFF grades throughout his entire career, 64 or under throughout his entire career, which is below average, okay? But the thing that Drew Lock brings to the table that a guy like Tyrod Taylor doesn't is the durability. You look at Drew Lock's career to this point, and you want to compare it to the guy he backed up last year in Seattle, which was Geno Smith, but it has not been good to this point. A 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio throughout his entire career, pretty much almost by the season. In 2019, it's the only time he wasn't 1-to-1. He had 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That was his rookie year with the Denver Broncos. The following year, 16 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. The following year after that, in 2021, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. In 2022, he didn't have any touchdowns or any interceptions or any playing time, whatever. In 2023, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So that tells me that if you do bring in a guy like Drew Lock, yes, you might get some of those throws down the field that you want. You might see a guy trying to, threaten these safeties and threaten the cover two and the hole shots and throwing the ball to our speedster wide receivers on the outside. But know that that is going to come with some mistakes that might put the New York Giants in a bad position. A guy like me, I'm going to take the guy who's willing to push the needle down the field and push the ball and at least try to go out there and make plays, even if he has to make some mistakes, over the guy that's going to be completely reserved and have this offense be at the bottom of the league when it comes to yards per attempt again. So if we got to go out there and send out Drew Lock to be a guy to get the first team reps to at least see and gauge what it is, I'm all for it. Shout out to the homie 1T, who I see is in the chat right now, always hosting the spaces on Twitter. Him and Base do a fantastic job of that. And I saw him tweet something out that I thought was like, man, this will be so ironic if this goes down. 1T said, imagine being Joe Schoen and saying, we're riding with Daniel Jones, passing on Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy, and Bo Nix, and the first thing that happens is Daniel Jones is demoted. I think if Joe Schoen is a smart guy and he wants to protect his bottom line, there's no way in hell they're going to start the season with Drew Lock, simply because of principle. It ain't got nothing to do with football. We had that conversation with Emery Hunt, who talked about Geno Smith coming into the 2017 season being miles better than what Eli Manning was. And because of principle, Eli Manning had to go out there and be the starter. And I think the Giants are in a similar situation here with Daniel Jones. Now, yesterday on Twitter Spaces, we were talking about a great conversation. I thought it was a bit of a stupid conversation, but in the end, I got some good data from it. And we were talking about the Dak Prescott situation. You've seen people speculate that the New York Giants might want to sign Dak Prescott coming out of free agency next year. I say that's impossible. I don't see Dak Prescott being a guy who wants to come and play for the New York Giants, who he's completely dominated. In the last 11 matchups, he's 11-0, has not lost a game to the New York Giants since his rookie year. So I just don't see that happening. But we were talking about letting Dak Prescott walk, the Cowboys not paying him, right? Because they're saying that Dak Prescott might try to command somewhere around $60 million. And my point to that was that the Dallas Cowboys dug this grave, and they are in this position now where they paid Ezekiel Elliott. They did not address the quarterback position in the drafts to be able to have a successor for Dak Prescott. So you got to do what you got to do now with a window to go out here and try to win a Super Bowl coming to an end, and that window looking like it might be kind of closing. I think they're forced to go out here and have to pay Dak Prescott. And I think now the New York Giants are in the same exact position with Daniel Jones. You committed to him now, so you cannot be a team that's going to say we're rebuilding and preach patience. You got to go out there and absolutely get results now. Now, Dable is coming into this season with a air-it-out type of offensive mentality. And I think that what's going to end up happening is that's either going to shine a light on Daniel Jones to show that he is capable to make these plays within this offense, or it's going to completely expose him for the quarterback that he is not, that he can't get these things done. Let me run down some numbers here for y'all from 2023 that were just mind-boggling to me. And I do understand that the competition at the beginning of the year was a little bit more fierce than what the other two quarterbacks faced with Tommy DeVito and Tyrod Taylor. But Daniel Jones had 6 starts in 2023, right? He threw at least 1 touchdown pass in only 1 game, the Arizona Cardinals game. In 5 of his 6 starts, he had 0 passing touchdowns. The Giants had at least 1 passing touchdown in every other game except 3 games. It was the Jets game, which was in that monsoon where Tyrod Taylor ended up getting hurt in the first half. And in the second half, they didn't even throw the ball. Like, literally. They gave Saquon Barkley the ball over 20 times in the second half. So I'm almost like not even counting that game. The Saints and the Bills games, no touchdowns from the backup quarterbacks. Tyrod Taylor versus the Bills, and I believe it was Tommy DeVito against the Saints. So that's 8 games for the New York Giants without a single passing touchdown. Okay? 5 of them from Daniel Jones. And to top it off, to let y'all know that I'm not just piling on Daniel Jones here, 10 of those games, we didn't even have a rushing touchdown. The Giants got to find a way to fix this offense, okay? And outside of 2022, this offense has been at the bottom of the league the whole entire time that Daniel Jones has been here. So I'm leaving this up to Brian Dable to be able to go out here and figure out a way to make this work. You know, I frequently see the statement being said about Brian Dable that he's a quarterback whisperer. Well, we're going to have to see that this year. If we needed it more in any other season, it's this year. You got to go out there and find a way to maximize the potential of this quarterback room, which is looking like one of the worst in the entire NFL right now. So we'll see how that goes. Again, I see a lot more people just jumped here into the chat, into the stream and whatnot. If you're looking for a vibe and you're looking for a plug to check out tonight's Hard Knocks episode, which is going to start here in less than 15 minutes, we have a link pinned to the top of the live chat. Go ahead and check that out. That's going to take you to where you need to go. And I want to talk about just one more thing before we get up out of here. And then I'll let you guys go and enjoy Hard Knocks finale, episode 5 tonight. So let's get off into this last topic. I want to talk a little bit about how the New York Giants need to start the season. All right. Now, shout out to the gang. Y'all know I get a lot of these clips from Twitter and whatnot. This one came from the homie. He said, I strongly believe the Giants need to come out the gate 2-0 to have any shot this season. And when he says to have a shot, to me, that means at least make it to the playoffs. Finishing the year around 500 at like 8-9 or whatever, I don't think that that's going to, be a success for the New York Giants unless you can find a way to back into the playoffs and maybe win a wild card game, similar to what we saw in 2020, where the Giants almost got into the playoffs with just 6 wins. But I do think it is imperative that they start off 2-0. Now, I just wanted to put this on record. A lot of what I do on this channel is so I could go back and look at it, see where my takes were, and assess from there, get more data, and how to pivot or, maybe I was right. But it's definitely not about being right at all times. But when I look at the 2024 season, and let me pull up the schedule here for y'all so y'all can see what we're looking at here. First 2 games, we're going to play the Minnesota Vikings at home, and then we got the Washington Commanders down here in my territory in the DMV at FedEx Field. I think that the New York Giants are going to come out, and I think they're going to lose week 1 to the Minnesota Vikings. And I honestly think it's not even going to be that close of a game. I think it'll be a 1-score game till about end of the third quarter. Vikings will push that to like a 13-point lead and get that game out of reach. But I do think that we're going to be more prepared against the Washington Commanders. Rookie quarterback in there and Jaden Daniels, who definitely looks pretty good at training camp right now, but I'm not able to see a lot of throwing the ball down the field. He does look like he bulked up a little bit since the draft. His arms look a little bit bigger. He is in command. They are placing him on the pedestal as the franchise quarterback already, media keeping him away. All the other guys on the team outside of him and pretty much Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, all were out there signing autographs and all that, and those 3 players went straight back to the locker room. No real media press for them that was not like the professionally done media. But I do think that the Giants are going to end up being, I'll say at best case, 1-1 entering week 3 about to go against the Cleveland Browns. I think it still gives them a shot. You look at weeks 3 through about 7, it's pretty treacherous. But looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers at the end of that run, I think that's another game that the New York Giants can win. Now, I did predict about 4 to 6 wins for the Giants when the schedule was first released. But just seeing how things are kind of operating and maneuvering through camp, I do see a couple more games here that might be winnable. I think that Saints game is a winnable game. I think that Falcons game is a winnable game. A lot of people are looking at the Atlanta Falcons as a Super Bowl ready type of roster right now, and I strongly disagree with that. I don't think that defense is quite ready, and honestly, I don't think the weapons on the outside are ready with the Atlanta Falcons either. Bringing in Kirk Cousins, I like it. It's a good move. It should help guys like Drake London, Kyle Pitts. They should all get better this year. But I think that the Atlanta Falcons will probably be a team that is, hovering around the 500 rank, probably going to be a team that'll just barely not make the playoffs. That's how I'm looking at them. So I look at them like that could be a win. We've seen in the past with Anthony Richardson in his rookie season that injuries can be a thing. I forget who's the backup quarterback over there now that Gardner Minshew went to the Raiders. But if they have to pivot and go to a backup quarterback situation again, I look at that like that could possibly be a win as well. So I see a few here. Carolina Panthers could be a W. I do think it's pretty important that the New York Giants get off to a good start. 2-0 would be fantastic, but I think that's asking for a little bit too much. If we can leave that first 2-game stretch 1-1, win one of these games in the middle of that weeks 3 through 7. If you get a dub against maybe the Seattle Seahawks, maybe the Cincinnati Bengals, maybe you luck up and you can compete with the Philadelphia Eagles. It is at home. We haven't beat Philly in Philly since 2013, so if it was in Philly, I would completely rule it out. But maybe there's a chance here that by the time you get to the bye week, maybe you're hovering around 500. We'll see how it goes. But like I said, man, I don't have a lot of faith in the New York Giants this season. I think that this is going to be a realization point for the front office this year that we can't go into 2025 and be still relying on Daniel Jones to be the New York Giants quote unquote franchise quarterback if we deal with another lackluster season. And honestly, man, like being that these guys are professionals, I trust them, right? But like when I see the way that they've handled the quarterback position, in particular, since they got here, declined the fifth-year option, which to me, I know that getting in the room with a guy helps, you know, when he's in your locker room and you see him day in and day out. But I really think that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll should have been able to assess what they wanted to do as their future plan with Daniel Jones before the beginning of the 2022 season. And if they would have done that, then they wouldn't have declined the fifth-year option on Daniel Jones, and we would have saved some money in that situation. And now you then decline the fifth-year option. You go into the next year. He has a good year. I'm not afraid to say he had a good year. And then you go out there and you pay this guy $92 million guaranteed after he really had no resume. Those are like stark differences. Those are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Like when they came in here and they declined the fifth-year option and brought in Tyrod Taylor, I thought the plan was going to be to bring out, you know, Tyrod as the bridge quarterback to then get you to that rookie and reset the contract clock on the quarterback position and get the New York Giants into the rebuild immediately. Like I talked about earlier in this stream, when you look back at that 2021 draft from Dave Gettleman, there's literally only one player, that's Azeez Ojulari, on our roster from that entire draft. And the clock is ticking. We need results like ASAP. And I think that Joe Schoen has kind of just been, it's been the quarterback position where I'm just like, I don't have full faith in Joe Schoen right now because of how they've handled the quarterback position. And honestly, I hope that there's a scapegoat somewhere, you know, between the lines here that John Mara kind of forced it. Like, that's the only explanation that I could really come to that why Joe Schoen, a professional at what he does, would assess the quarterback position the way that he has been. So, you know, unfortunate for the New York Giants, you know, going into this year, because to me, this is the opposite of professional, the way that they have addressed the quarterback position for the Giants thus far. So, you know, you might get one more shot. I think they will get one more shot. They have been operating like a front office that feels like they have a longer leash, very chill, lackadaisical, calm, collective type of vibes. You know, you don't see the urgency as much on Hard Knocks with these guys. And I think that maybe there's some kind of deal, some unwritten kind of deal that these guys are going to be here for a little while, you know, after what happened with the previous regimes with the coaching staff and with the general manager situations with Dave Gettleman and Jerry Reese. You know, so I think we got to just kind of be patient, I guess, as fans and just deal with it, you know, for the time being. And you know, this season to me is a bit of a buffer in a way to just get to where we need to get next year. And I do hope that the Giants can come out and just surprise me because, like, as critical as I am of the team, I don't think anybody would spend as much time as I do and not be rooting for the team to win games. You know, we're going 4 days a week during the season. We've been going every week, you know, pretty much since the draft. We've been going every week over here. And a few streams sprinkled in between. And, you know, 4 streams a month on Bleacher Report. Like, we all want to see the team win. I think that's something that even the fans who wake up and got hate for Daniel Jones, you know, on a daily basis, they still want to see this team win. And they're frustrated with what has been happening with the quarterback position. And they know that if you don't have at least a guy who is competent at that position, you're not going to get too far. So I got to agree with them on that. Shout out to the homie Nick the Wick one time in the building, man. I see you, fam. I hope all is going well with the football stuff in the offseason with you, man. I've been seeing you grinding out, man, with them workouts. It's inspiring, man. I need to get my ass in the gym and get up off this computer chair. But we got about a good 5 more minutes before this episode starts. Let me see what the homie Fryer talking about here one time. Fryer said, if the Giants go 4-0, what do you think went right? Oh, I love this. I did a whole video on this, actually, too. Fryer says, in my opinion, the games were close and our defense won us those games. Yeah, that would definitely be something. The defense, okay, so I made a whole entire video about this on the channel if you haven't seen it yet, and it was pretty much like how the New York Giants could shock the NFL. And this is what I think has to go right. The offensive line has to hit the ground running and gel immediately. This defensive line has to live up to all the hype that has been, you know, pushed upon them throughout this whole entire offseason with the trade and signing of Brian Burns, with Dexter Lawrence coming into this, you know, new system with Shane Bowen, and obviously with Kayvon Thibodeau on the opposite end. You're going to need somebody to fill that cornerback, that nickel cornerback position as well. And according to Shane Bowen, it's going to be Isaiah Simmons, right? So we're going to need Isaiah Simmons to, one, be able to get after the quarterback on those early downs where he's sitting in that nickel cornerback position or whatever it's going to be, money backer. And then when he is on the field in coverage, he's got to not be a liability. I think that's one of his weaker parts of his game. So that has to go well. You need somebody to step up and take the role of the cornerback 2 position. You know, hopefully it's a guy like Nick McLeod, maybe Cordero Flott, a guy that Joe Schoen drafted. Number 1 on my list, Malik Neighbors got to hit the ground as a superstar. Literally, he has got to hit the ground running and prove that, look, he upgraded this offense more than a guy like Saquon Barkley did from the running back position. And then you're going to need somebody to step up and fill that void from Darren Waller, you know, retiring and whatnot. And seeing Theo Johnson back on the field definitely gives me some hope for that. So a lot of things got to go right, Fryer. I think it could happen. I do think it could happen. Shane Bowen, you know, top 10 in a lot of categories with his defense with the Tennessee Titans. And then Carmen Brasillo coming in from the Las Vegas Raiders, top 10 offensive line in both pass blocking and run blocking. You just need all that stuff to go right. And then I think another top of the list one is Daniel Jones has to go out there and play competent ball. That's really what it is. So I'll get y'all up out of here, man. I know the Hard Knocks episode's about to start here in 2 minutes. I appreciate all of y'all rocking out with me, man. Shout out to Nick the Wick, who just sent in the $9.99 super chat, man. Big salute to you, bro. He says, excited for Malik and Theo Johnson. I am too. I'm excited for this, you know, about half of this rookie class. There's a lot going on with Tyrone Tracy and a lot of talk about Tyler Nubin as well. And I think these guys could, you know, be contributors year one. The part that doesn't give me as much faith, Nick, is that we haven't seen many year one contributors in all of the drafts from Joe Schoen. Kayvon Thibodeau, Micah McFadden was more of a year two contributor. Wan'Dale Robinson was more of a year two contributor. So I really do hope that Theo and Malik can be guys that can contribute right off the bat. And, you know, to Fryer's point, that's what we're going to need to be able to, you know, have some success in 2024. Let me see. I see Omega Supreme sent in a little bit of a paragraph. He said, opening play of the 2024 season, long past the Neighbors or Hyatt, and they have to come down with it, set the pace for the season. That will be awesome. I'm right there with you. Hopefully Daniel Jones can you know, let the boomerang go. We'll see what happens with that. But big shout out to all of y'all. I see all of y'all in the building. I didn't get to say what's up to all of y'all. I see Marjorie, David, the Tank is in the building. Howieman is in the building. Shout out to all of y'all, man. I appreciate y'all pulling up. And people that are seeing this on the rerun, if you digging the vibes, man, hit the subscribe button. Check us out. We here every week talking New York Giants football. And then during the year, it's going to be all NFC East stuff to go along with New York Giants ball. So definitely, you know, your support is definitely welcomed here. And last, I'll say it again, for those of y'all that might have just popped in, if you need a plug to check out tonight's episode, it's pinned to the live chat when the stream goes off. I'm going to put it in the comments section, man. Again, big salute to all of y'all, man. Y'all know I can't do this without y'all, man. Y'all the gang one time, and salute to y'all. Big shout out to everybody out here supporting them New York Giants, man. Y'all know how we end every stream over here on Authentic and the Beard, the best division in football. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams, because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT, Combat Jack. Rest in peace to one of the dopest rappers to ever touch a microphone, Chino XL, who just passed away. Y'all know I'm a big hip-hop head, and that's a wrap, y'all. Enjoy this Hard Knocks episode like I will. I will be on Bleacher Report tomorrow at 11 a.m. doing a breakdown. I'll catch y'all there, and if not, I'll see y'all back for a Giant Overreaction on Monday. Don't forget to keep your eyes peeled for the documentary and all the episodes we're going to be releasing throughout the season. Big salute to y'all, man. Enjoy this episode. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.